Keanu Reeves is known for his humility, generosity, and respect for everyone, no matter their status. But one evening, an unsuspecting waiter tested his patience in an unexpected way only to be left utterly. It was a quiet evening at Le Grand Étoile 1. That night, a man walked in, dressed simply jeans, a black blazer, and well-worn boots. He wasn't flashy. He didn't arrive in a luxury car with a chauffeur. He didn't do it. But to the untrained eye, he could have been anyone, a regular man just looking for a meal. And that's exactly what one particular waiter saw. A customer who, in his mind, didn't belong. The waiter, a young man named Daniel, had been working at Le Grand Étoile for over a year. So when he saw Keanu, "Sir," Daniel said, his tone laced with condescension, "I believe you might be looking for a different kind of restaurant. This place is rather exclusive." Keanu raised an eyebrow but remained calm. "Oh, I was hoping to get a meal here," Daniel sighed, as if speaking to a child. "With all due respect, we have a strict dress code and a certain clientele we cater to. I don't think this is the right fit for you at this point." The muttered, looked horrified, but hesitated to intervene, unsure of what Keanu would say. Keanu, instead of revealing his identity, simply smiled and said, "That's an interesting way to treat a customer." Daniel smirked. "We have a reputation to uphold. We don't just serve anyone." The conversation had drawn the attention of other diners. Some guests who recognized Keanu exchanged shocked glances, whispering amongst themselves. Others, unaware of who he was, simply observed with curiosity. A young woman seated nearby gasped audibly, "Oh my God, that's Keanu Reeves," she whispered to her date. Another diner, an elderly gentleman, shook his head. "That waiter has no idea who he's talking to." Daniel, still oblivious, continued, "There are other restaurants more suitable for people like you." Keanu simply nodded, still unfazed. "I see. And do you treat all your customers this way?" The smirk on Daniel's face faltered for a brief moment, but he quickly regained his arrogant demeanor. "Well," he said with a fake chuckle, "we do our best to maintain a certain standard." At that moment, the restaurant's manager, a man named Louis, appeared, his face pale. He had heard just enough to realize what was happening. "Mr. Reeves," Louis exclaimed, his voice filled with panic. "My deepest apologies." Daniel turned, confused. "Wait, what?" The room fell silent as Louis rushed over, bowing slightly. "Sir, I am so sorry for this misunderstanding. Please, allow me to personally escort you to our finest table." Daniel's smug expression vanished. He looked between Keanu and Louis, his face turning red. "Wait, what's going on?" Daniel asked, his voice shaking. Louis turned to him sharply. "Do you have any idea who you were speaking to?" Daniel stammered. Aye. He's just..." Louis cut him off. "He owns this restaurant." The blood drained from Daniel's face. The arrogance, the superiority gone in an instant. Keanu watched him with a calm expression, not angry, just disappointed. "I was just here for a meal," he said softly. But I guess I learned a lot more than I expected. Daniel swallowed hard, his mind racing. He had insulted not just a customer, but the owner of the very restaurant he worked for. I'm so sorry, Mr. Reeves, he stuttered. I didn't realize. Keanu held up a hand, silencing him. It's not about who I am, he said gently. It's about how you treat people. Everyone deserves respect. You never know who you're speaking to, or what they might be going through. Daniel's head dropped in shame. He knew Keanu was right. Keanu then turned to Louis. Don't fire him. Both Louis and Daniel looked at him in shock. Keanu smiled slightly. Just make sure he understands what it means to treat people with kindness. Louis nodded. Of course, sir. Daniel, still in disbelief, whispered, "Thank you. And I'm sorry." Keanu simply nodded, then took his seat. He didn't need revenge. He didn't need to humiliate anyone. His actions had spoken louder than any punishment ever could. That night, the entire restaurant learned a valuable lesson. Never judge a book by its cover. True class isn't about money, it's about kindness. And the most powerful people are often the ones who choose to be humble. Keanu Reeves didn't need to prove his status. He didn't need to get angry. He let his wisdom and grace do the talking. And that's exactly why he is one of the most beloved figures in the world. Next is another interesting story. Please listen. It's a surprise gift. It was a beautiful evening at the Royal Crest, one of the most luxurious hotels in the city. The entrance was lined with Ferraris, Bentleys, and Rolls-Royces as wealthy guests arrived in their high-end vehicles. Among them, an old, slightly worn-out classic car pulled up to the valet stand. The paint was faded, and the engine hummed softly but steadily. The valet, a young man named Chris, took one look at the vehicle and rolled his eyes. Chris had been working at the Royal Crest for months and had grown used to serving only the rich and powerful. He took pride in packing only the finest luxury cars, considering himself a gatekeeper to exclusivity. When the man driving the old car stepped out, Chris barely glanced at him. He was dressed in simple, comfortable clothes, jeans, and a dark jacket. Nothing about him screamed VIP. The man smiled and handed Chris the keys. "Take good care of her," he said in a friendly tone. Chris scoffed under his breath. Her. He had never understood why people got attached to cheap, outdated cars. But instead of keeping his thoughts to himself, he let out a quiet chuckle and muttered, "Yeah, this thing really belongs here." The man heard it, but instead of getting angry, he simply raised an eyebrow and smiled. "Oh, and why do you think that?" Chris smirked. "Well, sir, this is the Royal Crest our guests usually arrive in. Finer vehicles." He gestured toward a nearby Lamborghini as if proving his point. The man nodded slowly. "I see. So, a car determines how someone should be treated." Chris shrugged. "I mean, appearances do matter in places like this." Chris smirked. "Well, sir, this is the Royal Crest our guests usually arrive in. Finer vehicles." He gestured toward a nearby Lamborghini as if proving his point. The man nodded slowly. I see. So, a car determines how someone should be treated. Chris shrugged. I mean, appearances do matter in places like this. Mr. Walker, Mr. Dawson exclaimed. Welcome back, sir. We weren't expecting you this evening. Chris frowned. Wait. What? Mr. Dawson turned sharply to him, his voice tense. Chris, do you have any idea who you're speaking to? Chris blinked. He's just a guest. Mr. Dawson's expression darkened. No, he's not just a guest. He owns the hotel. Silence. Chris's stomach dropped. He felt the blood drain from his face. The man, now identified as James Walker, the billionaire owner of the Royal Crest, gave Chris an amused but measured look. Chris swallowed hard. I didn't know, sir. I'm so sorry. Mr. Walker tilted his head slightly. And if I wasn't the owner, would my car still make me unworthy of your respect? Chris stammered, trying to find words, but none came. Walker sighed, but there was no anger in his voice. Respect isn't about money, kid. The people driving these expensive cars, many of them worked hard, yes, but others inherited their wealth or got lucky. And some of the wealthiest people I know still drive their first car because it reminds them where they came from. Chris lowered his head in shame. I understand, sir. I was wrong. Mr. Walker studied him for a moment, then said, You're young. You'll make mistakes. But remember this. The way you treat people says more about you than it does about them. Chris nodded quickly. I promise I'll do better. Walker handed his keys back. Good. Now, let's try this again. Would you mind parking my car? This time, Chris took the keys with both hands and bowed slightly. Of course, sir. I'll take great care of it. Walker smiled. I know you will. As Chris drove the classic car to the valet lot, he realized he had just learned one of the most valuable lessons of his life, one he would never forget. Never judge someone by their appearance. True success isn't about flaunting wealth, it's about character. Respect should be given to everyone, not just those who look important. The most powerful people are often the most humble. And in the end, it's not the car that defines the man, it's the way he treats others that truly matters.